Lieutenant Noah Matthews had never been this nervous in his life. As he paced outside the meeting room, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The meeting was supposed to be about diplomacy with the Sirus, an alien species that had recently made contact with Earth. This wasn't just any diplomatic mission. It was humanity's first official meeting with an advanced alien race. It was a big deal, and Noah was the one chosen to represent Earth. He ran a hand through his short brown hair and glanced at the door. "Stay calm," he told himself. "This is just another meeting. You've handled worse." But even his own thoughts couldn't settle his nerves. Noah had read the reports about the Sirus. They were taller than humans, a smooth glowing skin that changed color based on their emotions. Their most unique feature, however, was their ability to read minds. The thought of someone knowing his every thought made him uncomfortable. He had to admit, his thoughts weren't always the most appropriate. He took a deep breath, trying to clear his mind of any lingering thoughts that might be too embarrassing. He couldn't let his nerves get the best of him. This meeting was important. If things went well, it could pave the way for future cooperation between Earth and the Sirus. He had to make a good impression. The door to the meeting room slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, sitting at the long metallic table, was an alien woman. She was everything Noah had imagined, and yet nothing like he expected. Tall and graceful, she had pale blue skin that shimmered with a soft glow, and her eyes were a deep shade of violet. Her features were delicate but sharp, giving her a mysterious and regal look. Noah stepped into the room, his heart racing. He had expected to see some kind of alien representative, but this woman was unlike anything he had ever seen. His breath caught in his throat as he looked at her. "Lieutenant Noah Matthews," she said, her voice smooth and melodic. "I am Araya, representative of the Sirus people." Noah quickly nodded, trying to hide his surprise. He had imagined aliens to be much different, more monstrous or intimidating, but Araya's beauty was almost otherworldly. She smiled at him, and for a moment Noah felt as if she could see straight through him. "Please, have a seat." She gestured to the chair across from her. Noah slowly sat down, trying to focus on the task at hand. He had to keep his mind clear, but as he settled into the chair, his thoughts started to drift. He found himself wondering what Araya was like when she wasn't representing her people. She smiled like that often, if she had ever been to Earth, and he quickly shook his head. He had to stop thinking like that. It was inappropriate, but it was too late. As if on cue, Araya's eyes narrowed slightly, and her lips curved into a knowing smile. I hadn't spoken, but Noah swore she was looking right into his mind. "Can hear your thoughts, Lieutenant," she said softly, her tone playful but serious at the same time. Noah froze. His face turned bright red. He had been thinking about her, about what she might look like in different situations, about how beautiful she was. He had never been one to think like this about anyone, especially someone so alien. I'm sorry," Noah stammered. "Not sure what to say I didn't mean." Araya raised one hand, her expression calm but amused. "There is no need to apologize. Humans' minds are fascinating," she said, her voice filled with curiosity. "But I must admit, your thoughts are quite revealing." Noah swallowed hard. I didn't think Araya's smile widened. "Don't worry, Lieutenant. I do not judge you." She leaned back in her chair, her violet eyes twinkling as she studied him. "It is simply unusual. Most beings do not think such things so openly." Noah's mind raced. He didn't know what to say. His face was on fire. The last thing he wanted was for this alien to know his every thought. And yet here she was, calmly, telling him she could hear it all. That's amazing," he said, trying to regain his composure. "I didn't realize Araya held up a hand to stop him. You are not the first to be embarrassed by this. It is simply how my people communicate. We do not need words to understand each other." Her smile softened. "But it is also true that I can read your mind. If you wish, I could teach you how to block such thoughts. But that would require more trust, and I believe we need to establish trust first." Noah nodded slowly. He hadn't expected the Sirus to be so understanding. But at the same time, he couldn't help but feel a bit of a connection with her. Maybe this was a new way of communication, one That was more honest than anything humanity had known before. "Thank you," Noah finally said, feeling a little more at ease. I'd like to learn more." Araya's eyes flickered with something he couldn't quite place. Was it surprise, or perhaps interest? "Good," she replied. "But first, tell me. What else have you been thinking, Lieutenant?" Noah's heart skipped a beat. He hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should answer her question. His mind raced again, and he couldn't help but think of her beauty, her mystery, and how strangely comfortable he felt with her, despite the initial embarrassment. "I think," he said carefully, "that this might be the beginning of something new for both of us." Araya smiled again, a knowing look in her eyes. "Yes, Lieutenant, I believe it is." Noah sat back in his chair, feeling the heat on his face. He was still recovering from the surprise of having his thoughts exposed. Araya's calm, cool demeanor was both reassuring and intimidating at the same time. He had never met anything that could read his mind, and the fact that it was happening now with an alien was overwhelming. Araya was sitting across from him, her glowing skin reflecting the dim light of the room. Her violet eyes never left his face, and he could feel her gaze drilling into him as if she was studying his every move. The awkward silence between them grew, making Noah even more uncomfortable. "So," Araya said, breaking the silence, "now that we have established that you are thinking in ways I can hear, I'd like to know more about humans." Noah blinked, still trying to process everything. "It's more about humans. What do you mean?" "Your emotions, your thoughts, how you experience the world," she answered, her voice smooth and filled with curiosity. "Humans are fascinating to us. We're so different from us, but also similar in some ways." Noah wasn't sure how to respond. His mind had been clouded by his earlier embarrassment, but now Raya was talking about something else entirely, something deeper. He glanced at her, her expression both serious and interested, and he realized that she wasn't just reading his mind, she was actually trying to understand him. Well, Noah began hesitantly, "Humans are complicated. We have all kinds of emotions, from love and friendship to fear and anger. It's a lot to handle sometimes, but we deal with it, you know? We learn how to live with each other and ourselves." Raya nodded slowly, taking in his words. "That sounds like an intense way to live." It is," Noah agreed. "But it's also what makes us human." She tilted her head, studying him intently. "And what of your thoughts? They seem, well, not always aligned with your emotions." Noah's stomach dropped. Was she referring to the thoughts he had about her earlier? Thoughts that he didn't even want to acknowledge, let alone share. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I didn't mean to think those things," he said quickly, avoiding her gaze. Araya smiled softly. "It is not a crime, Lieutenant. I understand. Our minds work differently, but I find it interesting that your thoughts are not always what you say. Your mind and your words do not always match. For us, it is impossible to lie when we speak." Noah felt a pang of guilt. He had always valued honesty, but in this case, his thoughts hadn't exactly been honest or respectful. He wasn't sure what to say next. "How did you explain to an alien that your thoughts were sometimes unfiltered, or that the brain just wandered to places it shouldn't?" "I guess ... I'm just not used to being so open," Noah admitted, his voice quieter now. "I've always kept a lot to myself, the mind. It has a way of running wild sometimes." Araya's gaze softened, her earlier amusement turning to something gentler. "I understand, but I do not judge you, Lieutenant. Your mind is simply different from mine." The way she said it made Noah feel both relieved and oddly exposed. Her understanding seemed genuine, but the feeling of being vulnerable wasn't easy to shake off. He took a deep breath and looked up at her again. "Q," he said, his voice steadying. "I didn't mean to make things awkward, but I guess I'm still trying to figure out how to interact with you, ... with someone who can hear everything." "I think," Araya chuckled softly, the sound light and pleasant. "You humans think too much about it. It is not so difficult. I only hear your thoughts when you let them show. The harder you try to hide them, the louder they become." Noah blinked. "So, if I stop thinking about it so much, you won't hear it?" "Exactly," she replied with a small smile. It is not so difficult once you learn to relax. Noah considered her words carefully. Relax. That was easier said than done, especially with an alien who could read his every thought. But Araya seemed different from the cold, calculating creatures he had imagined. She wasn't judging him. She wasn't angry with him for thinking about her in ways he knew he shouldn't. Instead, she was trying to help him understand. You know, Noah said, shifting slightly in his seat, I've read a lot about your species. You've got some pretty amazing abilities. But I didn't realize how much your minds would affect mine. Araya's expression grew more thoughtful. You humans are full of surprises. You have so much, inner conflict, so much emotion. It is not bad, just different. I think that is why we find your species so fascinating. You are, unpredictable. Noah chuckled at that. I guess we are. We never know what's going to happen next. Araya's lips curled into a smile. Exactly.
Oh.
But that is what makes you intriguing.
I know.
You never know what someone might think, or feel, or do. You can only guess. And for us, that is both strange and exciting. The more they talked, the easier. Noah found himself relaxing, even though part of him was still acutely aware of her ability to hear everything he thought. He wasn't sure if that would ever get easier, but for now, he felt like they were building a kind of understanding between them, one that didn't rely on words, but on something more genuine. No, Noah said, suddenly feeling a bit braver. I'm glad we're talking like this. Didn't think it would be so, easy. Raya's eyes glowed softly in the dim light of the room. It is easy once you stop overthinking everything. She paused for a moment, as if considering something. Perhaps you can show me more about your people, about the things you value, and in return I will show you more about my people. We are not so different, Lieutenant. Noah smiled, feeling a strange sense of relief. I'd like that. I really would. The days after their first meeting felt like a whirlwind for Noah. Each time he saw Araya, he couldn't shake the feeling that something unusual was happening between them. What started as a simple diplomatic mission was slowly turning into something more, a bond that he couldn't quite explain at first. He had tried to ignore the unsettling feeling that came with knowing she could hear his every thought. But as they spent more time together, Noah realized that Araya wasn't just reading his mind for the sake of understanding. She was curious about him, his culture, and the emotions that humans experienced. It was a feeling that made him open, up in ways he had never expected. One afternoon, after a long meeting about trade and military cooperation, Noah and Araya found themselves walking along the observation deck of the space station. The view of the stars outside was breathtaking, millions of tiny points of light scattered across the vast blackness of space. For a moment, Noah forgot about everything else. The silence between them was comfortable, and the only sound was their footsteps on the polished floor. Noah glanced over at Araya, who was staring out at the stars with a soft expression on her face. She looked almost peaceful, her violet eyes reflecting the distant light of the stars. Couldn't help but admire her, not just for her beauty, but for the way she seemed to carry herself, so confident, yet so calm. He knew she could probably hear his thoughts again, but for once, he didn't feel embarrassed. Instead, he simply allowed his mind to wander. You know, Noah started breaking the silence. I've been thinking a lot about what you said about humans being unpredictable. Araya turned her head to look at him, her expression thoughtful. And what have you concluded? Noah paused for a moment, trying to find the right words. I guess. I never realized how much we rely on our emotions to guide us. You're right. We're unpredictable, but maybe that's because we're constantly feeling, constantly trying to figure out who we are and what we want. Araya seemed to consider his words carefully. I find that fascinating. We Sarus do not feel in the same way. Our emotions are more controlled, more balanced. It is how we communicate with each other and how we avoid conflict. But your emotions are so much more intense. It is intriguing. Noah smiled softly. I guess it can be a bit much sometimes. But it's what makes us human, right? Araya nodded. Yes. It is what makes you unique. Your unpredictability, your emotions, it is something I am learning to understand. They continued walking, and Noah couldn't help but wonder if this was the start of a deeper connection between them. He had never felt so open with someone before, not even with people he had known for years. Araya wasn't like anyone he had ever met. She wasn't judging him for his thoughts, his awkwardness, or his emotions. Instead, she seemed genuinely curious, wanting to understand him, to learn about his world. "So," Noah said, trying to shift the conversation. "You mentioned that you could hear my thoughts, but only if I let them show. What if I try to block them? Can you still hear me?" Araya chuckled softly. "It is not easy to hide your thoughts from me, Lieutenant. It takes effort, and even then, I can still sense your emotions. But I will respect your privacy if you wish to keep certain things to yourself." Noah nodded. He hadn't realized how much effort it would take to block his thoughts. But there was something comforting in the fact that Araya respected his boundaries, even if she could hear everything else. It made him feel like he could trust her. "You know, it's kind of funny," Noah said with a small laugh. "I came into this mission thinking I'd have to be all business, serious, and professional. But here I am, talking about feelings and emotions with an alien, and it doesn't feel weird, you know?" Araya's eyes softened as she looked at him. "It is not weird, Noah. It is simply a different way of communicating, a way that allows us to understand each other better. And I am learning that it is not always necessary to hide what we think or feel. Sometimes sharing those things is the best way to connect with someone." Noah felt a warmth in his chest at her words. She was right. As strange as it felt at times, talking openly with Araya had allowed him to feel more connected to her in a way he hadn't expected. He didn't need to hide his thoughts from her. She already understood him better than most people did. They stopped walking, standing near a large window that overlooked the planet below. The soft glow of the station's lights reflected off Araya's skin, making her look even more ethereal. For a brief moment, Noah forgot about the mission, the responsibilities, and the uncertainty that had brought him here. All that mattered was the present, standing next to her, sharing this strange, unspoken bond. Araya spoke again, breaking the quiet. "Noah, I am curious. What do you value most in your life? Your people seem to place great importance on relationships, family, love. What does it mean to you?" The question caught him off guard. It was so simple, yet so profound. He thought about it for a moment before answering. I think what matters most to me is the people I care about. Relationships are everything. Without them, life would feel empty. We don't always get things right, but we try, and that's what matters. We're all just trying to figure it out together." Araya smiled gently. "That is something I understand. We Sarus may not feel the same way, but we also value connection. Even if it is different from what you experience, it is still important." Noah turned to face her, and for the first time, he truly felt the weight of her words. They may come from different worlds, but in some ways, they were not so different after all. As they stood there in the silence of space, Noah realized that this was only the beginning of something far more complex and exciting. Whatever the future held, he was no longer alone in this strange, vast galaxy, and for the first time since he arrived, he felt at peace with that. The days went by quickly, and each time Noah saw Araya, he felt that strange mix of comfort and uncertainty. He was getting used to being around her, to speaking openly and honestly. But still, there was something about her, something powerful that left him both curious and intimidated. It wasn't just the fact that she could read his mind. It was the way she made him feel understood, something he had never experienced so deeply with anyone else. As much as he tried to convince himself that this was just a professional relationship, he couldn't ignore the growing bond between them. One afternoon, after a particularly long day of meetings and discussions about the future of Earth-Sira relations, Noah found himself walking with Araya again, this time in one of the garden areas of the space station. The lush greenery and colorful alien flowers were a stark contrast to the cold metal walls of the station. It was a peaceful place, a quiet escape from the tension of their diplomatic duties as they walked. Noah couldn't help but notice how different the atmosphere felt now. Awkwardness from their first meeting was gone. Instead, there was a natural ease between them, like two people who had known each other for much longer than they had. It was strange, but in a good way. So, Noah said, glancing over at Araya, how does your species handle ... Well, everything. Emotions, relationships, all of it. I know you mentioned before that your minds are more controlled, but what does that really mean? Araya turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. We do not experience emotions the way you do, Noah. Our feelings are more balanced. More ... stable. We do not feel the same highs and lows that you experience. It allows us to think clearly, to make decisions without being overwhelmed by our emotions. Noah thought about that for a moment, so you don't ever get overwhelmed by feelings. No anger, no joy, no love. Not in the way you do, Araya explained. We do feel, but it is more like a steady current, not a storm. For us, relationships are built on respect and mutual understanding. Love, as you understand it, is rare for us. We do not fall in love with others. Instead, we form connections based on shared purpose and trust. Noah was quiet for a moment, processing her words. He had always thought of love as a powerful, unpredictable force, something that could change everything in a single moment. The idea of relationships being based on purpose and trust, without the emotional chaos he was so used to, was hard to imagine. But that doesn't mean you don't value your connections, Araya continued. We still care for one another. Deeply, it's just ... different. Noah nodded slowly. I see. That sounds ... peaceful, I guess, but also kind of lonely. Araya's violet eyes met his, and she gave a small, knowing smile. Perhaps, but it is how we live. And it is not for us to judge how your species experiences emotion. We simply observe. Noah smiled back, feeling a sudden sense of connection with her. I guess we could learn from each other, huh? Could, she agreed, her voice soft. There is much I could learn from your people as well. They continued walking in silence, the sound of their footsteps the only thing breaking the stillness. The more Noah learned about Araya, the more he realized how much there was to understand, not just about her, but about her people, her culture, and how they saw the universe. The quiet was interrupted when Araya suddenly stopped walking. Noah looked at her, puzzled as she turned to face him. Her expression was more serious now, her eyes focused and intense. Noah, she said, her voice steady. I have been thinking a great deal about our conversations, about the things you have shared with me, and I have come to a realization. Noah raised an eyebrow. A realization? Araya nodded. Yes, I have come to understand that, while I may not experience emotions in the same way you do, I am still learning to appreciate them. To understand them in my own way? Noah was about to ask what she meant when she took a step closer to him. It wasn't something he expected. His heart began to race, though he tried to keep his calm demeanor. This wasn't the first time they had been close, but something about the way she was looking at him made him feel like things were changing between them. Araya, he said, his voice a little more uncertain than usual. I am learning, Noah, she said quietly. And as I learn, I realize that there is something different about you, something I cannot fully explain. She took another step closer, her presence overwhelming in a way that made Noah's breath catch in his throat. It is not just your mind I find intriguing. It is you. Your emotions, your thoughts, they are more complex than anything I have ever known. Noah felt his pulse quicken, his thoughts swirling. He had never been so close to anyone in this way, especially not someone from another species. He didn't know what to say, didn't know how to react to the way she was looking at him, as if she was seeing something in him that he didn't even fully understand himself. I don't know what to say, Noah admitted, his voice a little shaky. Araya smiled softly, her eyes warm. You do not have to say anything. I simply wanted you to know that I value our connection, and I think I am beginning to understand what it means to care for someone in a way that is different from what I have been taught. Heart skipped a beat. He wanted to say something to explain how he felt, but the words didn't come. Instead, he simply nodded, trying to let the moment speak for itself. Araya reached out and placed a hand gently on his arm. We are not so different, you and I, she said softly. Noah's thoughts raced as he stood there, feeling her hand on his arm. It was as if the entire universe had paused, and in that moment he realized that the connection between them was deeper than he had ever expected. For the first time, Noah wasn't sure where this path would lead. But whatever it was, he knew he wasn't alone in it. That thought, more than anything, made him feel like he could face whatever came next. The days that followed felt like a dream to Noah. Every time he saw Araya, he couldn't help but feel a growing connection, one that neither of them had planned or expected. What started as a simple diplomatic mission had become something more. They shared moments of quiet understanding, deep conversations, and a bond that, though unusual, felt natural. But Noah knew that things between them couldn't stay this way forever. The reality of their differences, the boundaries they both had to respect, still loomed large. Raya was from a different world, with a mind that worked in ways Noah could barely comprehend. And yet, despite everything, he found himself drawn to her in ways he hadn't experienced before. One evening, after another long day of meetings, Noah and Araya found themselves alone in a quiet lounge of the space station. The lights were dim, casting soft shadows around the room. It was the perfect place for a private conversation. Far from the bustling halls of the station where the world seemed to rush by, Araya was sitting by the window, staring out at the stars. The soft glow of her skin reflected the distant lights of the galaxy, making her seem even more otherworldly. Noah couldn't help but admire her from across the room. She had become more than just a representative of her species to him. She had become a person he genuinely wanted to understand, someone he felt a strange, growing affection for. Araya, Noah said, his voice breaking the silence. "Can I ask you something?" She turned toward him, her violet eyes meeting his with a calmness that always seemed to put him at ease. "Of course, Noah. What's on your mind?" Noah hesitated for a moment. The words were difficult to find. He had never been this open with anyone, especially not with someone who could hear his every thought. But the bond between them had grown, and he realized that if they were ever going to truly understand each other, they had to start being honest. Double quotes. He began slowly, his voice quieter now, about what's been happening between us. "I don't know what it is, but I feel like there's something more here than just a diplomatic relationship." Araya's expression softened, and she leaned forward slightly. "I understand, Noah. I have been feeling the same way. Our connection. It is different from anything I have known." Noah felt his heart race at her words. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this conversation, but now that it had started, he couldn't stop it. "I've never met anyone like you, Araya. I've never met anyone who could understand me so completely just by reading my thoughts. I can't deny that I'm drawn to you in ways I don't fully understand." There was a brief silence between them. Araya studied him carefully, her eyes searching his face as if weighing his words. Noah's pulse quickened under her gaze. He had never been this vulnerable before, and part of him still felt uncertain about letting her in. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he didn't want to hide his feelings anymore. Araya spoke, her voice soft but firm. "You are not the only one, Noah. I may not experience emotions as you do, but I can feel ... something. It is different from what I have known, and it is difficult to explain. But I do not want to ignore it." Noah let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "So ... you feel it too? This connection?" Araya nodded. "Yes, I do. But I am also aware of our differences. I come from a place where emotions are controlled, and relationships are not based on passion. But what I feel for you, Noah, is something I have never felt before." Noah took a step closer, his heart racing. This wasn't just about them being from different species or cultures. It was about their shared experiences, their vulnerability, and their willingness to open up to each other. He couldn't ignore it anymore. He couldn't deny what he felt. "I don't know where this is going, Araya," Noah said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I know that I can't just ignore it. I can't ignore how I feel about you." Araya stood up, taking a step toward him. The space between them felt smaller now, the air thick with unspoken words. She looked into his eyes, her expression serious yet warm. "I do not know where this will lead either, Noah, but I know that we must take this one step at a time." "Oh," are from different worlds, with different ways of seeing things. But perhaps we can learn from each other. Noah's heart felt full at her words. She wasn't pushing him away. She wasn't rejecting what they had between them. Instead, she was willing to see where this connection could go, to explore it with him. "I want to learn from you, too," Noah replied, his voice steady now. "I want to understand you, your people, your way of thinking. And I want you to understand me, Araya. I don't want to hide anything from you." Araya's lips curved into a small smile, the kind of smile that made Noah's heart skip a beat. "Then let us continue this journey together, Noah. Let us see where it takes us." For the first time since meeting her, Noah felt a sense of peace. It was as if everything was falling into place, as if the connection between them was meant to be. He didn't know what the future held for them, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid. He reached out, taking her hand gently in his. The moment was simple, but it meant everything. For the first time in a long while, Noah felt truly seen, truly understood, and as they stood there hand in hand, he knew that this was just the beginning. The following days felt different. Noah and Araya continued their meetings, their conversations, but something had shifted. The bond between them, once tentative and unsure, was now undeniable. Every glance, every word, every shared moment seemed to pull them closer, and Noah found himself thinking about her more than he ever had before. It wasn't just her ability to read his thoughts that fascinated him anymore. It was her willingness to learn about him, to see beyond his human flaws and weaknesses. And it was his growing desire to understand her as well. Despite the many differences between them, her calm, controlled emotions versus his unpredictable, passionate ones, there was something about her that made him feel more alive than he had in a long time. One evening, after a long day of talks with the Saris diplomats, Noah found himself standing at the window in his quarters, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. The stars twinkled in the distance, endless and beautiful. A reminder of just how small he really was in the grand scheme of things. But in that moment, he didn't feel so small. Not with Araya in his life. He hadn't planned on it, but his thoughts had been drifting to her again. The way her skin shimmered under the lights of the space station. The way her eyes lit up when she spoke about her people. He couldn't stop thinking about her smile, the way it made his heart race. There was a knock on his door. Noah turned, surprised. He hadn't been expecting anyone. "Come in," he called out. The door slid open, and there she stood, Araya. Her glowing blue skin and violet eyes seemed to fill the doorway. And for a moment, Noah couldn't speak. She was beautiful in a way that went beyond looks. It was something. In the way she carried herself, the quiet confidence that surrounded her. "Hi," Noah finally said, trying to hide the fact that his heart was beating faster than usual. "Hello, Noah," Araya replied, her voice as smooth as ever. "I hope I am not interrupting." "No, not at all," Noah said quickly. "What brings you here?" Araya stepped inside, her gaze meeting his as she closed the door behind her. "I wanted to talk to you about us." Noah's heart skipped a beat. He'd been waiting for this moment, but he hadn't expected it to come so soon. He nodded, trying to keep his cool. "Okay, what about us?" Araya looked down at the floor for a moment, as if collecting her thoughts. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than usual. "I have been thinking a lot about what we've shared so far, and I want to be honest with you. I do not know what the future holds for us, but I believe we have something worth exploring. I want to continue learning about you and about Earth, and I want you to learn more about me and my people." Noah's mind raced as he processed her words. The thought of a future with Herv continuing to explore this bond they shared filled him with a mixture of excitement and fear. Could they really make this work, with all their differences? But as he looked at her, standing there in front of him, he knew one thing for certain. He didn't want to walk away from it. He didn't want to let this moment slip through his fingers. "Want that too, Araya?" Noah said, his voice steady now. "I don't know what this is, or what it could become, but I'm willing to see where it takes us." Araya's face softened, and a small smile appeared on her lips. "You are more open than I expected, Noah. I respect that." Noah couldn't help but smile back. I think you've helped me see that sometimes it's okay to take risks, to let go of the fear and just ... trust. Araya took a step closer to him, her presence calming yet overwhelming. It is not easy, I know, but sometimes the greatest rewards come from stepping outside of our comfort zones. Noah nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. Despite all the uncertainties, despite the differences between their species and cultures, there was something comforting about being with Araya. The way she understood him, the way she respected him, made everything seem possible. For the moment they simply stood there, the quiet between them filled with unspoken words. Then, without thinking, Noah reached out and gently touched her hand. His heart raced as he felt the warmth of her skin beneath his fingertips. Araya didn't pull away. Instead, she looked at him, her violet eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. You do not need to be afraid, Noah. I am here, and I will remain here as long as you need me. Noah's breath caught in his throat. She had no idea how much those words meant to him. I don't want to be afraid, he said quietly. But sometimes I wonder if this is just too much, too different. What if we can't make it work? Raya shook her head gently. If we are truly willing to try, then it will work. We do not need to know the future, only that we are willing to walk forward together. Noah looked at her, his heart swelling with a mix of emotions. He had never felt so vulnerable, so open with someone before. What? With Araya? It felt natural. It felt right. He wasn't afraid anymore. He wasn't afraid of what might happen, because he knew he wasn't alone. You're right, he said softly, squeezing her hand. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I want to face it with you. Araya's smile widened, and for a moment, Noah forgot about everything else. The universe outside, the war, the unknown, it all faded away. In this moment, there was only the two of them. Then we will face it together, Noah, Araya said, her voice filled with warmth, as they stood there, hands intertwined. Noah realized that no matter how different their worlds were, they had found something beautiful together. The future might be uncertain, but it no longer felt so daunting. With Araya by his side, he knew they could face whatever came their way, and for the first time in a long while, Noah felt truly at peace.